Okay. So we're going to go over, I'm going to review every module up until current module. Let me pull up my notes. I will not share my notes on the screen. It tends to make for a very distracting video recording. But I will suggest for you to pull up the handouts, the PDFs for each module to refer to them as I go through them. Okay. So once again, the video is being recorded, so feel free, you can change your name and you can keep your video off. All right, let's start with module 1, the very beginning. Again, I advise you to pull up the PDFs, but if you don't are unable to do that, that's perfectly fine. You might want to have a pen and piece of paper to take a few notes. So let's start from the very beginning. First, we have the Gita Panchavishaya, right? The 5 topics covered in the Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara, this is a supreme. Jiva, the living entity. You and I, spirit, living entity, including animals, plants, so on, all living creatures. Ishvara, Jiva. Prakriti, Prakriti is nature, right? Nature other than the living entities, right? One could say inanimate nature, like earth, water, fire, so on and so forth. Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, time, and then karma, activities. So these are the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. And everything about the Bhagavad Gita is about the relationships between these 5 subjects, or interaction, and how all it comes together to form existence, complete existence as we know it. Feel free to interject, all right? At any point throughout this hour, feel free to interject with your questions or put them in the chat, all right? So we have the 5 subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita. Now they can be divided into 2 categories. In fact, all Vedic knowledge can be put into 2 categories. Kshetra, Kshetragya. Gya means to know, right? Like jnana, knowledge. So there's Kshetra, Kshetragya. Kshetra means the field or the place, right? Kshetragya means he or the person who knows the place. So Kshetra, if we take these 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita, divide them into 2, Kala, time, Prakriti, material nature or all nature, and karma, activities. These 3 are classified as Kshetra. This is the place, or the place is made up of all these things. We can use the example of our body. Our body exists in time. It is made up of Prakriti, nature, and it engages in activities. So this body, our physical body, is Kshetra. Then we have Kshetragya, means the knower of the field. If you want to use the body as an example, who knows this body? I do. So Jiva is Kshetragya. But there's another entity who also knows this body. That is Ishvara, the supreme. Right? Because we know that Ishvara, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says Paramatma, the supreme, also lives within the heart. So Jiva knows Kshetra. So Jiva is Kshetragya. And Ishvara is also Kshetragya. Any questions thus far? Hold on just a second.
So I got Ishvara, the 5 things: Ishvara, Kala, Prakriti, and then what are the last 2?
Ishvara, Jiva.
Jiva.
Yep.
And one more. So Ishvara, Kala, Prakriti, Jiva, and
Karma.
Karma. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I did mention to put your questions in the chat. Continue to do that, but I'm looking at a split screen, so I may not always get to your chats immediately. So I have to pull it up. I'll just put it on the side. Let's see if that'll work. There we go. All right. All right, so we have the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita, categorized into Kshetra, Kshetragya, Ishvara and Jiva. Kshetragya, they are the knowers of the field. Jiva is the knower of this field, right? I'm the knower of this body and how this body moves in the world. Ishvara is the knower of all bodies, right? Because Paramatma is travels within every or with every living entity. There is the example, I think is Vishnu talking to Narad Muni. Anyways, in the I cannot quote the exact Upanishad, but therein Vishnu gives the example of 2 birds in a tree. The tree is the material body, material existence, and there are 2 birds. There's the Jiva and there's the Ishvara. And the Jiva flies from one branch of the tree to another, goes from body to body. Each branch is considered a body. So the Jiva flies from branch to branch, trying to eat the fruit of the tree. In other words, trying to enjoy. So that's the Jiva bird. The Paramatma bird follows the Jiva from one branch to the other. So wherever the Jiva goes, Paramatma follows. But the witness bird simply follows and just witnesses, does not interfere, just simply witnesses. You and I, the Jiva, we're trying to enjoy life, going from branch to branch, trying to eat berries, eat the fruit. And Paramatma is simply waiting for us to turn towards Paramatma, the witness bird, and to strike up a relationship. This is the spiritual process, the process of turning from the fruit, recognizing we have a companion, and developing a relationship with that companion. Forget later on, I'll put in our group the Upanishad from which that example comes. Okay, so let's move right along. We're still on the first module. Now we come to the Arisha Dvargas, right? Because we're talking about this conditioning, right? We're in the material existence. We're completely beset by conditioning. We're not our true, pure, and manifesting our highest selves because we are conditioned by material nature. We're conditioned by the Arisha Dvargas. Ari, enemy, Shad, 6 enemies. Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Kama means desire. Krodh, anger. Lob, greed. Moha, delusion. Mada, arrogance. Matsarya, envy. And there's a mixture of all these. All of our conditioning is just a mixture of all these. Everything we're going through in this life, in this world, is just a mixture of all these. And we are being controlled by these 6 enemies, right? We are completely at their mercy. And thus we create problems for ourselves. We preclude our ability to exist in freedom, right? So moksha means freedom from the influence, the control of the Arisha Dvargas. All right, we're still in the first module. So freedom from the Arisha Dvargas, that's moksha, that's liberation. Now, there are 2 when we are free from material conditioning, when we are free from the Arisha Dvargas, then our spiritual nature or spiritual constitution can manifest, even in this world. And there's a realization of the self. This is called Brahman realization. There are basically three types of liberation. When we have this freedom, there are three levels, if you will, of this liberation, this freedom, this moksha. One is Brahman realization. I won't say levels, I won't say types, because we can choose between how we want to express this realization. So the first, yes, use the word expression. The first expression is Brahman realization, where we recognize we are spirit beings, that the entire world is actually, even Prakriti is actually all spiritual energy. And there's a oneness, there's connection, there is understanding of our oneness and sameness with everything around us. And this is when there's realization of our own spiritual identity, our own spiritual power, potential, issues of racism, misogyny, all these isms and all this separateness, all this divisiveness dissolves. Doesn't mean we do not recognize that we're standing in front of a tiger, but it recognizes that even though we must protect ourselves from a tiger, we are not controlled by envy. We're not controlled by, we do not try to destroy the tiger for some foolish reason, right? We remove ourselves and let the tiger go on its way. So this is one category, a manifestation of freedom. Then there is Paramatma. Then there's a realization that there is actually a supreme. This is realization of Ishvara. This Paramatma realization is limited. We won't get into why it's limited here. There's a limited realization that there is a supreme something, right? Then there is the third manifestation of realization, and that is, yes, there is a supreme, and we can have a relationship of love with that supreme. Now, these manifestations of realization are dependent upon our proclivity as spirit beings. We may want to only realize that there is a supreme, that there is not a supreme. It's just simple oneness, and that's all there is. There's a lot of religious, spiritual paths that only want to deal with the oneness of all that is, which is perfectly, that's what the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita, that as a person develops, that's what they experience, right? Yeya tamam prapadyante is all surrender and are free from this control of moksha. They surrender to their spiritual nature, they surrender to their spiritual selves. Then, according to that manifestation, according to that surrender, they will experience their spiritual realization in a number of ways. Any questions thus far? This was the first module. Okay, let's go on to the second. Remember, feel free to interject at any point. So in the second module, we went over the 4 Purush arthas. Purusha means human being, male, female, human being. Arthas means, artha means way or means, tools by which one achieves something. So Purusharthas, the 4 Purushartha means the 4, it's often translated in so many different ways, the 4 purposes, the 4, I like to say the 4 means of creating a successful life. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the most accurate way to describe the Purusharthas in English. The 4 ways to create and live at our highest human potential. Very important. This is pertaining to human beings. Very, very important. This does not pertain to animals, plants, other living entities, other jivas, right? It's for jivas in a human body. Dharma, they are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma, is referring to all the knowledge, everything we must know to have, to create a successful life, right? The do's, the don'ts, the natures of how relationships should be. What's our relationship? Remember, we talk about the interaction between the 5 Gita Pancha Vishaya, relationships between the Ishvara, the Jiva, Prakriti, how all that comes together. That's all dharma, all this knowledge. of life, of existence in this world, spiritual and material. That's all dharma. Then there is artha. Artha means in this life, what is essential to create, to manifest, and live at our highest potential. Oftentimes this is condensed to money, which is absolutely true. We need money to exist. One cannot deny that. Krishna says that himself in Bhagavad Gita. We need to have a career. We need to be able to make a living, is a better way of describing it. To make a living. How do we make a living in this world? Dharma, artha, kama means how do we live a happy life? Kama means, in this context, kama means enjoyment. How do we enjoy this life, the life that we have? That's a lot of the times in spirituality, we unfortunately hear a lot about, renunciation and give up. There's almost guilt put around enjoyment in this life. Absolutely not. Enjoying life, and this is very important, we'll get into this further when we discuss karma. Enjoying life is essentially who we are. So karma is how do we actually enjoy this life. And then moksha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha is freedom. Freedom from this life. Freedom from, we have so many restrictions and limitations. How do we reach our highest potential? Rather than being suppressed and repressed and restricted and limited, how do we break free of these limitations? Moksha. All right? So, in Dharma, we're on module 1.2. In Dharma, Dharma covers so much. All types of Dharma, Varnashram Dharma, this Dharma, that Dharma, Shri Dharma, Dharma Yuddha, all types of Dharma. Dharma, remember we talked about Kshetra and Kshetragya? Kshetra, the field, Kshetragya, the knowers of the field, Ishvara, Jiva. Dharma can also be categorized accordingly, right? So dharma, knowledge, all this information that deals with kala, karma, prakriti. So for example, dharma dealing, that's in the category of kshetra, dealing with kala, karma, and prakriti. For example, that type of dharma, dharmas pertaining to that, would be Varnashram Dharma. I don't know if you've heard of Varnashram Dharma. Swadharma, it seems what we're going to talk about. Swadharma. Swadharma, it is an essential, foundational concept and idea in the Bhagavad Gita. So Swadharma falls in the category of Kshetra because Kshetra has a very, very unique, if you will, quality. It's temporary. Doesn't last forever. Kala, time, is in relationship to the manifestation of Prakriti, of nature. Nature exists in a span of time. It's not eternal, right? The manifestation of nature. So time in and of itself is limited. Prakriti also is limited. It's here for some time. It deteriorates, it changes. It's limited by nature. Karma, activities, also limited. So everything in Kshetra is limited, it's temporary, and so on and so forth. Swadharma is a particular type of dharma. Swadharma means one's own nature, is also temporary because it's based on our physical body. Swadharma, our nature, our inclination, our proclivities, is based on our physical, the attributes of our physical, emotional being and body. Our soul as well, but we'll leave that aside for me. Therefore, Swadharma is also temporary, necessary, absolutely essential and necessary, but temporary. Very important. We come over here to Kshetragya, right? The knowers of the field. There are two: Ishvara, the supreme; Jiva, you and I, our spirit, nature, quality. There's dharma pertaining to these two, and this is called Sanatan Dharma, or Jaiva. Jaiva means of the Jiva. Jaiva Dharma. So Sanatan Dharma, Jaiva Dharma is about what is the relationship between these two. Ishvara, Jiva. This is Sanatan Dharma. This understanding, this Dharma is eternal because Ishvara is eternal and Jiva is eternal. Our spiritual self is eternal. So Jaiva Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, is eternal and it's universal. Swadharma is not universal. In other words, my Swadharma is not the same as yours. I mean, the principle is universal, but my Swadharma is not the same as yours because I have a different body, mind, and senses. So my proclivities, my constitutional nature, my inclination is different from yours. So it's not universal. Swadharma is not universal. Sanatan Dharma is universal because it's dealing with the eternal spiritual nature of the Jiva. Universal, timeless, applicable to everyone regardless of race, religion, culture, everything. That is Sanatan Dharma, also called Jaiva Dharma. Now, let's go a little bit more into Swadharma. In the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Arjuna, follow your Swadharma. It is essential. Even if everything is going wrong in your life, always follow your Swadharma. Never give up your Swadharma no matter what. All the way at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, Krishna says the exact same thing. He used the exact same words, the exact same Sanskrit text. Krishna says, follow your Swadharma. No matter what. Everything is going wrong, right, irrelevant. Always stick to your Swadharma. So this comes back to the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. When we explore Dharma, the most important exploration in exploring Dharma is Swadharma, understanding our Swadharma. How do we come to know our Swadharma? Yes, it's temporary. Yes, it only pertains to this specific life, our life in this body. How do we know our Swadharma? 3 ways. There has to be an understanding of our physical desires, the type of food we like to eat, the types of music we like to hear, the types of exercises we like to deal with. All of this is essential. Our physical nature, understanding and not repressing or it doesn't mean we act foolishly. It does mean we understand our physical desires, natures, and senses. That is the first level of understanding that has to be gained. The second level is our subtle nature. That means mind, intelligence, and ego. In other words, what causes us to feel happiness? What causes us to feel compassion? What brings fear to our mind? So we're dealing with our emotional selves, not our physical senses like taste and like listen to and smell, not that. What on an emotional level gives satisfaction, right? What things fascinate our mind? What types of maybe books we like to read that gives us a sense of what gives certain types of feelings? This is essential. This is absolutely essential. What types of relationships brings what kinds of feelings? What relationships do we tend to shun? What types of relationships do we tend to gravitate towards on an emotional level? Absolutely essential. And then third is, this is a principle called Nitya Das. Sorry, hold on just a second. This is a principle called Nitya Das. Nitya means eternal. Das means servant. Bear with me. What is constitutionally part of a jivatma, part of our nature, and it's what separates us from the Supreme. What separates the jiva from the Supreme is this principle of Nitya Das. The Nitya Das means we always look up to something. We pedestalize something. And this is not a bad thing. It is not, it can become, when you add ego, ahankar. We'll come back to that. But we're always looking up to something. We have always aspire to something. That is a constitutional nature of the jiva. We are constantly aspirational in nature. You want to look, whether it's a person, whether it's an idea, an ideology, it can go off the rails. Absolutely. When this quality, when this attribute of the jiva is covered by the Arisha Dwargas, then absolutely this goes off the rail. It manifests in terrible ways through the Arisha Dwargas. But when we have achieved moksha, this aspirational nature means we recognize and we gravitate those things which are uplifting, those things which are affirming spiritually. So this is a good thing. But it manifests also in this world, in this material reality. And we must know and see and recognize how it is manifesting here. So right here, right now, in this life, what do you look up to? What do you aspire for? Know that. So once you have all these things, you know all these things, you're validating all these things, you're not repressing. And then when you put all these three in harmony, that's your Swadharma. You know what you are drawn to, your physical senses, your physical nature, what this physical desires you have. You know yourself on an emotional level. You know those things to which you are aspired to. Put those three things together, and then you live in harmony with that. That's your Swadharma. Then you choose occupations that validate those things. You get involved in relationships that validate those three things. Keep those three things in harmony. That's your Swadharma. That's why Krishna says, Arjuna, always follow your Swadharma. And remember, in those two verses, the one in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita and the one in the end, Krishna says, follow your Swadharma, even if it destroys you. Destroys is it's a very interesting word. One would think that if you follow your Swadharma, everything should be perfect. Swadharma provides, when you follow your Swadharma, when you are in harmony, three things happen. I didn't want to spend this much time on this module, but it's very important. This concept of Swadharma is absolutely essential by Krishna's own statements. When you have harmonized your Swadharma, when you're living in harmony with these three aspects of yourself, the three benefits. Number one, you gain a sense of meaning. Because you're living in harmony with your essential self, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, on basis on the soul, because all of these three things are in harmony, your life has meaning. For you, has meaning, has purpose. I always do this. I always refer people and suggest people, read the Bhagavad Gita, understand, study the Bhagavad Gita. The second book I always recommend is Viktor Frankl's In Search of Meaning. In fact, I recommend that book more than the Bhagavad Gita because you can get completely lost in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is just such an ocean of just compressed, condensed knowledge. You can lose it in the Bhagavad Gita. But Viktor Frankl's In Search of Meaning is the perfect supplement to your study of the Bhagavad Gita. So Swadharma gives, first thing, meaning. When we're living in harmony with ourselves, we gain a sense of meaning that is absolutely, it's our North Star in this world.
I have a
gives us
question.
sense of direction. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
So what you have explained right now, when
Mhm,
Krishna says that you have to live with your swadharma first thing, you have
mhm,
to follow that.
mhm.
So even Kauravas, they lived with their swadharma. So how were they doing then adharma?
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, this is absolutely brilliant. Yes. You have gone too far ahead with this question. But this gets to the crux of Swadharma. Okay,
Like if we look in right now to life, like Jeffrey Epstein, he did wrong. But what he did, he thought that was right. That was his swadharma in enjoying his life the way he wanted with manifesting money and doing all wrong things. So how can Krishna says that, and then why is that person then doing adharma? Because in his eyes, he was doing dharma, according to this. So I'm now confused.
love the confusion. This is the Bhagavad Gita right here. I'm going to stop this here and I'm going to do it in complete, there's no other way. Yes, this question is at the crux of understanding Swadharma and making spiritual progress. Duryodhan, Jeffrey Epstein, these individuals, I'll use Duryodhan, the character Duryodhan in the Mahabharata. He was following his Swadharma to a T. I'll say something very quickly. In the Mahabharata, it's described that Duryodhan, at the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he went to heaven. And Yudhishthir, the story goes, had to experience hellish conditions first, and then he went to heaven. Yudhishthir went to heaven, and he saw Duryodhan there having a wonderful time. And Yudhishthir says, what is he doing here in heaven? It makes no sense whatsoever. And Vyasadeva had to explain. And this question I'm not going to answer here. I'm going to create an entire different video, and we're going to go into Swadharma in depth. Because if I answer the question here, we're not going to get through the rest of some of these other modules. But this question, all of you, please take note of this question. An individual like Duryodhan following their Swadharma is what they should be doing. Duryodhan should be following. That was his Swadharma. He should absolutely follow it. Now, and I'm just going to say this one thing. I don't want to leave it like that because it's like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that he should not have been stopped. It's very important. It doesn't mean that Bhishma, Drona, Yudhishthir should not have stopped Duryodhana. Absolutely. There was all kinds of, when Draupadi was assaulted, that should have been stopped. Even though Duryodhana he was being Duryodhana, that does not give an excuse for the people around him to continue to do what he was doing. Very, very important. Now I'm going to stop there and I'm going to create an entire different video because she has opened up a can of worms here. And I'll do an entire video only on Swadharma and this is very important. When we look at Krishna's teaching of Swadharma, he says that in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, then he gives all of this wonderful spiritual knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, and then he comes back to Swadharma at the very end. The very end, he says, whatever you do, follow your Swadharma. The reasons why are essential to understand. I can't do it here. We're going to go completely off, but it is important. So I will make an entire video on this topic alone. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's absolutely essential, that question, and essential for it to be addressed and answered. So I'm going to wrap up this module with understanding what Swadharma does. When we are in harmony with our Swadharma, first of all, we have a sense of life meaning. Our life, we have a sense of direction. We may get, distracted once in a while, but we're always able to come back to our true north that is uniquely ours. Then there is optimism. No matter everything that's going wrong in our life, when we know our Swadharma, we're able to see that light at the end of the tunnel. That's what Swadharma provides that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Then the third thing it provides is resilience. We're able to actually push through the difficulties that happen in life. We do not go into addictions. We do not go off the deep end. We're able to stay focused and show resilience and determination. That's what Swadharma gives. Okay, let's go on to the next module, which is module 2.1. Oh, we're on 2.1. Forgive me, it's 2.2. Okay. This is when we start to explore karma because of the four purusharthas, right? Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Karma is actually the most complex, and it gives the most, we struggle with it the most. Dharma, yeah, we can understand dharma. So dharma is also a big, complex idea or concept. Artha is very straightforward. Moksha is very straightforward. Karma is very, very living. How do we live in this world? Because we have desires, we have impulses, and we're trying to balance all these things. So we start exploring karma in module 2.2. So there's a verse in relation to karma. I'll just read the English. Krishna says, knowing oneself to be, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O Arjuna, one should steady the mind by spiritual intelligence, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable, very important word, insatiable enemy known as karma. So let's understand karma. Let's go back to jiva, our spiritual, who we are spiritual. We are jivatma. We have a material body, mind, and senses, but the soul, jiva, is eternal, spiritual energy in nature. This jiva has a number of spiritual attributes. One spiritual attribute is called ichcha, desire, will. This desire of the jiva is to experience, we talked about how the jiva is aspirational, right? It is nitya dasa, it is always looking up to, is this aspirational nature. So there is this, one of the desires of the jiva is to experience happiness. I don't know if I put this, I did not put it in the handout, which I should have. Anyways, there's the attribute which is called ananda. We've heard ananda means enjoyment, right? The jiva is ananda maya, means the jiva is always, ananda means pleasure, happiness, bliss. Ananda maya means the jiva is always seeking ananda, always seeking happiness. That's what the jiva is. Eternal, spiritual attribute, not only of the jiva, but also Ishvara. Ishvara is also Anandamaya. Kala, karma, prakriti, it's not Anandamaya. Ishvara jiva, Anandamaya. Seeking happiness, satisfaction, spiritual bliss. So this desire to experience happiness and satisfaction is always an eternal attribute of the jiva. Ichcha, this desire. Now, when you take this ichcha of the jiva and it becomes controlled by the Irisha dvargas, what comes out the other end is kama. So this Icha desire, pure spiritual desire of the Jiva, corrupted by the Arisha Dwargas, manifests as Kama, material desire in this material reality. I hear no questions, so you're with me. Okay. So Kama, remember in the translation, Krishna said this insatiable enemy known as Kama. It's insatiable because it originates in this attribute of Icha from the Jiva. That's why it's insatiable. It's not supposed to not be there. Of course it's there, because it comes from Icha, the eternal attribute of the Jiva. The problem is that it's corrupted by the Arisha Dwargas. So it therefore manifests in giving a different name, and the name it's given is Kama. And when it's in this manifestation and we are completely controlled by it, it falls apart. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Hamo, and it just, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. So you're still with me here. Very good. Now this Kama, right, it's just manifesting. It's corrupted by Arisha Dwargas and manifesting as Kama. This Kama actually it exists in this energy, as an energy. It exists and manifests in 12 very specific places which Krishna identifies, and he's identified it in this verse. This is why also Bhagavad Gita and understanding of Sankhya philosophy is actually essential to understanding the Bhagavad Gita. If you don't know Sankhya, you can get lost. Sankhya helps understand and pulls apart the concept in the Gita. Understanding Sankhya, when Krishna says mind, senses, and intelligence, Krishna's talking about 12 things. The 5 knowledge acquiring senses, eyes, nose, ears, and so on, and the 5 working senses, the stomach, organs of evacuation, reproduction are called the working senses, arms, legs. So these are 10 senses, 5 knowledge acquiring, 5 working. Kama manifests and is expressed through that. What we like to hear, listen to, the eyes are always seeking to see something nice. The nose is always seeking something. This seeking to experience the sense objects, that's Kama. The desire to, I can't stand bananas, right? So the desire to have a fruit salad free of bananas is Kama being expressed through my tongue, right? Wants some things, doesn't like those things. That's the expression of Kama. Same thing, right? Where I enjoy, I used to, all my life I played soccer. I've gotten away from it since the pandemic. But anyways, I enjoy playing soccer. That is an expression of Kama through my legs, through my arms and legs, through my physical nature, body, right? So all these things, these desires we have in our material body, it's expressions of Kama. This is how Kama manifests. And it manifests in the mind and intelligence, right? The mind and intelligence are drawn towards certain types of things to fulfill, to feel satisfaction. Because Anandamaya, right? The jiva is always seeking pleasure. That seeking of pleasure, desire for happiness, a desire for Ananda, through the Irishadwargas manifests in what the mind and intelligence want to see, right? So Krishna then describes, so how do we live in this world? So Kama is not going anywhere. If you have a healthy body, Kama is going to manifest. If you have a healthy mind, Kama is going to manifest. Healthy intelligence, Kama will manifest. In fact, we want to see this manifestation of Kama in this world because that means we're healthy. Physically, emotionally, intellectually, we're healthy. All right? But at the same time, it has to be mastered. When Kama masters us, there's a problem. We have to master Kama. And when we master Kama, that's actually when we experience satisfaction. So Krishna says, how do we, in this verse, right? How do we conquer this insatiable enemy known as Kama? Krishna says, by buddhi yoga. Evam buddhe param buddhva. By buddhi yoga. And this is where Krishna introduces buddhi yoga earlier on, but Krishna always talks about buddhi yoga throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So by buddhi yoga, that we can conquer and deal with this insatiable enemy known as kama. Now, there's a difference between buddhi yoga. Buddhi means knowledge, intelligence, and jnana. Jnana also means knowledge. There's a very, very important and essential distinction between buddhi yoga and jnana yoga. And you are all going to be teachers of the Bhagavad Gita. You're going to be in conversations with people in yoga studios, and people are going to conflate these two. They are not the same. Please, if you do nothing else as a teacher of Bhagavad Gita, do a number of things. The Bhagavad Gita, be able to help people find and identify and live according to the Swadharma. As a teacher of Bhagavad Gita, that is one of the best things you can do in terms of helping them in understanding the Bhagavad Gita and going forward, living a successful life. Second thing, have people understand there's a difference between jnana yoga and buddhi yoga. People's understanding of these two derails their practices of the various yoga processes. These are the two yogas that they conflate the most, and that's entirely wrong. Let's get to it briefly. They are different in process and outcome. Even though they both essentially, the Sanskrit terms essentially mean the same thing. Jnana means knowledge, buddhi means intelligence. Okay? Similar. Jnana yoga is not a new concept. Spiritually, it's all through the Vedas, it's everywhere. Buddhi yoga was established by Krishna and was first talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. That's where it comes from. Buddhi yoga was established by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not, it's everywhere else after the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Whereas Jnana Yoga Krishna talks about Jnana Yoga in reference to the other Vedas. So Jnana Yoga was going on before Krishna gave the Bhagavad Gita. Buddhi Yoga comes from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So any definition of Buddhi Yoga can only be found in the Gita. Any other definition of Buddhi Yoga that is outside the Bhagavad Gita is incorrect. Right? Krishna is the founder, propagator of Buddhi Yoga. Having said that, what's the difference? The process of Jnana Yoga is meditation. You sit, a lot of times people think Jnana means to memorize the Vedas. It's not. That's not Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga, the process of Jnana Yoga is, yes, you may hear something from the Guru, you may read something, but it is to meditate on what you have understood. And through that meditation, dhyana, comes realization. That's the process of Jnana Yoga. Through that process, there is a result. The result of that is Brahmananda. Remember earlier on in this video, we talked in this session, this is being recorded. Earlier, we talked about the 3 levels of realization. Brahman realization was the first, the recognition of everything, all of existence is actually at its core and essential level, it's spiritual, it's Brahman. Even the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita, Kshatriya, when it's all at its essential nature, it's all Brahman. That realization is what comes from Jnana Yoga. That's the outcome through the process of meditation. That's Jnana Yoga. Buddhi Yoga, the process is different. The process is love. Bhakti. That's the process. By Krishna's definition, Krishna is the founder of Buddhi Yoga. The process is bhakti. The outcome is prema, love, a loving relationship. So the process is love, and the outcome is pure loving relationship, prema. 2 completely different processes. Now, both Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga give us the ability to, it's moksha. Both give moksha. Both give us freedom from the Arishadvargas. All right? Jnana Yoga and Buddhi Yoga. Both give freedom, both give moksha from the Arishadvargas. No dispute there. Okay? Let's go on to any questions thus far. If I don't hear any questions, I'm assuming you're all with me. So I'm just going to carry on. So just interject, just jump right in when you have a question.
So we can live with Buddhi Yoga and Gyan Yoga all the time? Or can we, because say I meditate, right? But I also love God. So is that
Yes.
okay? Like we
Yeah.
don't have to choose to live by one only, right?
No, absolutely not. In fact, they're the only difference I would say is that meditating is actually a form of bhakti yoga, right? Smarana, to remember, to meditate. So actually, absolutely. The difference is because love sucks. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I didn't. What I mean is it's easier. Our experience is that our greatest pain comes from a relationship, right? With someone else. The greatest pain we experience because someone else is being an idiot and causing us harm. But it's also the source of our highest and greatest happiness. Comes from relationships. But because we have trauma in relationship, we don't naturally and automatically choose love. A lot of spiritual processes are actually afraid of what a real relationship involves because a real relationship requires vulnerability. And because of our trauma, we want complete wonderful happiness without the possibility of or without being vulnerable. That's what that's what Jnana Yoga provides. It provides freedom, realization of Brahman. It's called Brahmananda. Brahman, Ananda. Ananda means bliss. There's perfect, beautiful bliss in the realizing of Brahman. There is a bliss there. The pure realization and experience of our spiritual selves, absolutely. And like we said, this is a choice. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, this is a choice the spirit being, the Jivatma, can make on that level to just experience Brahmananda. Absolutely. But there's also, for those jivas who want to experience a relationship of love, which is called Premananda. So it's Brahmananda just with relationships involved. That ability to exist and to experience love without being fearful of vulnerability. It's love. That's all. So yes, you can absolutely. So Buddhi yoga does not exclude jnana. Absolutely not. But jnana yogis are not really interested in love, in loving relationships as an ultimate goal. Does that
So
make, if that
my
makes
my
sense?
question here again is it to love people or is it to love God? Because
Both.
I love, I am like, even if say I had an argument with my husband or kids,
Mhm.
but with God, I am still in love,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
So, and I am also meditating, so I understand the feeling of bliss.
Mhm.
And, but this love for God,
Mhm.
I pray or not pray, but a lot of people I see, they would just pray, right? And they would just preach about God, 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 but they don't meditate. So that is Buddhi Yoga. But is it okay if I'm just loving God and say if I have an argument with my husband or somebody else or a friend, but I still love God and I still meditate. So is that okay? Like
Yes, that's okay.
what is that? Like, do we have to love all the time every being or just God? Like that there comes the question
The
of
questions
Buddhi
you ask
Yoga.
are some of the best questions. Um, yes, but there are caveats. There's more explaining to be done. Um, what time is it? Okay. So I'm going to answer this question, then we're going to stop. Next week, we're going to continue the review. All right. Well, let me know if you want to continue. I think we need to continue the review before we plow on to other modules. I'm going to answer this question, and then afterwards, we'll close this session. And then via chat, we'll figure out whether or not we want more review next week, because we're only not even halfway through the review I wanted to cover. Another thing I want to mention before I answer this question is I was thinking about this over the last few days, and I'm going to make this optional. There's a lot of the Sanskrit verses that go along. Don't worry about memorizing them. That's not going to be a requirement for completing the course. All right, I'm going to remove that as a requirement. At another time, we can come back. I'll have maybe another class just for memorizing the shlokas, the Sanskrit and English. They are essential and they should be memorized, but I'm not going to make them as a requirement for completing this course. Okay, so don't focus on memorizing the Sanskrit. Become familiar with each and every one, because I do want to have memorization to be eventually a part of your certification. But for this particular course, don't worry about it, okay? Have familiarity. We'll go to memorization afterwards. All right, now to answer the question, there are some moving parts. And please continue to interject as I answer the question to make sure we're all understanding and I'm actually answering your question. A number of things came to mind when you were asking the question. One of the moving parts is understanding that a lot of people, they'll talk about, I love God, love God, love God. You can talk about loving God, but that is a talking about loving God is actually, for some people, that's an escape. Because how are you, on some level, you're not living with God. God is not living in the bedroom next door. So there's no real tangible interaction. So oftentimes you may have heard the term, what's it called? Spiritual bypassing. Sometimes people will use love God, and forget about everybody else as spiritual bypassing. Because you don't have to, God is, the easiest thing in the world is to love God. The most difficult thing is to love the wife that puts bananas in your fruit salad. You see that what we're dealing with here. So loving God, make sure that when we're practicing bhakti buddhi yoga, we're not spiritual bypassing. We're in truth, we're shunning relationships. We can't deal with the knuckle-headed husband, the wife who's throwing bananas at us, and so on and so forth. And we're just running to the mandir, God, God, God. That's actually what we should not be doing. That spiritual bypassing, it doesn't work. That's not it. That is not it. So that's not what you were saying. I'm just putting that out there because it's part of this whole issue of Buddha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and how we need to live this. That's the first thing. So people actually, whether they choose meditation, running to the mandir, saying God, 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 can be spiritual bypassing. Jnana Yoga can also, on a superficial level, can also be spiritual bypassing, right? You immerse yourselves in the study of the Vedas while your wife, family are suffering. That can also be a form. So spiritual bypassing can show up because we're unable to have the strength to deal with the world we live in. That's why the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, deals with all of it. The Bhagavad Gita, Gita Panchavishaya, dealing with Kshetra, and Kshetragya. Yes, there is our relation with the Supreme, but there's also Kshetra, this world we live in, here and now. Our wife is throwing bananas at us. How do we deal and love her? That's all part of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The problem is in this world, is we use spirituality, we use the Bhagavad Gita, we use all kinds of things to get away from doing the real work of being spiritual beings in a material reality. Now, there are the Babajis in the Himalayas who are doing meditation there. That's not spiritual bypassing. That they're actually on that level of that's their Swadharma. They are actually fully engaged in their Swadharma. That's not spiritual bypassing on that level. But because in this day and age, we are look at the headlines. There's epidemics of loneliness. We do not know how to interact with each other. Divorces through the roof, intergenerational schisms. parents and children. It's an absolute mess. And then we run to the Mandir, we run to Bhagavad Gita, we run to the Bible, we run to all these things because we don't know how to use that wisdom to really dig in and to actually embrace this world that we are dealing with. So, getting back to answer your question, forgive me. You asked some of the best questions. So, when you're asking the question, the answer is yes. When you mention, you're dealing with your family issues, you're meditating, you're also talking about God. So there's the practice of Buddha yoga does not exclude Jnana yoga. The practice of Buddha yoga does not exclude relationship with, the husband, the wife, and the children. It actually includes them. Your study, your meditation does not exclude. You can meditate, absolutely. You meditate I meditate every single day. You can meditate, but it doesn't exclude your interaction with the world around you. This is what we talk about. That's why Krishna says at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Swadharma, and at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is fully and completely realized, Krishna says, Swadharma. There's that Chinese saying that I think it's Chinese, maybe Tibetan. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is what Krishna is saying throughout the Bhagavad Gita. This is Krishna tells Arjuna, before I teach you the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna told Arjuna, do your duty, your Swadharma. After the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Swadharma, do your duty. It is an internal, that's why Swadharma gives the ability, it gives resilience, it gives focus, it gives meaning to everything that you do. It doesn't negate it. So we have to always make sure that spiritual bypass doesn't creep in. The Bhagavad Gita is not about Krishna, that's what Arjuna wanted to do. I'm not saying that wasn't your question, I'm not saying that's what you wanted to do. And just the spiritual bypassing is such a prevalent problem in the spiritual community.
So
Yeah,
again,
go ahead.
here, so does it mean, like simply put, so that every day we should meditate, and then with that we should love God and love His people or His creation every day, no matter what, and
Okay.
keep doing our work with that?
So the act of meditation, if you like meditating, meditate. There are many different types of meditating too. Make sure you're doing a meditation process that suits you.
Right.
Okay. And
And
what was the
then
second?
and then we put prayer and love into our lives every single day as well for
Yes.
everybody who is part of our life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And
Whether
remember,
they are good people or bad people, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Very good. I love this. Now we have to talk about what is love. From the point of view of the Gita, what is love? I'm going to give a quick example that was shared with me by my group. A tiger. You can love a tiger. Doesn't mean you have to go and feed the tiger. Doesn't mean you should not erect a fence between you and the tiger. Now, so when we're talking about love, now this gets very, very nuanced. And we can't cover it all here. But just the concept, I'm putting it out there, we can discuss it more, go over this more next week, next Sunday. So yes, love everybody. Absolutely. Bhakti, pure love, is universal. How you manifest that, how you express that is going to be unique to each individual and in every situation. Is that fair?
Yes.
I heard some hesitation. At least I think I did. So the answer on the whole is yes. Bhakti is universal and it's universally applicable in every time. And that is actually the pinnacle of maturity in bhakti yoga, is that you know how to express it, manifest it in every situation. You know how to transform every situation so that bhakti has at least the possibility, you're manifesting it, you're expressing it, and it gives space for the other to also manifest it as well. They may choose or may not choose to follow, to express, to manifest bhakti. That's their choice. Let's go back to the example of a tiger. How do you love a tiger? By leaving it alone. By leaving it alone, leaving its habitat intact. A tiger is supposed to exist in the forest. It's supposed to stay in the forest. It is supposed to have deer in the forest, so we don't kill off all the deer. I was reading this is an aside, but what happened in America with the Native Americans, when they killed off all the buffalo. Anyway, that's beside the point. How do we love a tiger? Leave it and protect its habitat. You do not love a tiger by going to what's a pet store, Petco, buying kitty kibble and going and feeding a tiger. You're going to be destroyed. So that's, on the other hand, how do we harm tiger? By going hunting a tiger, skinning it, and using its skin for a carpet in our living room. That's the opposite of bhakti. To exploit it, to use it for our own whims, because we're driven by kama, right? We like the way the fur of a tiger feels. So we go and we eradicate, we hunt tigers to near extinction. So there's much more to understanding bhakti than that. But to answer your question briefly, the answer is yes. Bhakti is universal. It's universally applicable. We can always manifest bhakti. When we mature in bhakti, that's there's 9 stages of maturity in bhakti. But when we mature in bhakti, we can transform every situation so that bhakti can be experienced by all, certainly by ourselves. Others can choose, but we have the ability to transform any situation so that bhakti can be chosen by everyone involved.
So I have another question. So
Go for it.
I live in a state where Christianity people are very radical here, right? So now they are in their bhakti to Jesus,
Yes.
right? So when I
Yes.
meet them, but they are not in bhakti with Krishna or anything with Hinduism. So even Om, so they outright say or negate it, or they say not nice things. So how can I still I say okay, but they're like, we don't want to do anything with you if you do even Om chanting, and they outright negate us. How can I even, should I even serve them or no? Is it like a tiger when you explained, like do I have put the fence there? That's my question. Like, how can I love them? I do. I said, okay, because when you do meditation, you reach that state and you know God is one, right? But when you come down here, people have created different religions and they say theirs is the best. And we have to love them and accept them because that's what we learn, but they don't. So, how do we? This is like, I know I'm asking a tough question.
No, go for it. Go for it. Let's say one thing. For the rest of you, we're over time. I'm going to keep recording. So if you need to leave, so be it. You can get the recording later. Sorry, carry on.
So, my question is, when I meet them and they talk about this, and because I do coaching and mentoring, they don't want to do anything like, oh no, because you're Hindu, I don't want to do anything with you. They bring the religion out when the coaching is not part of the religion. Like, I'm not coaching religion there, right? Coaching and mentoring is not religious. But because I'm Hindu, they don't want, they immediately outright, oh, what's your religion? And I would proudly say, I'm Hindu. but I'm not coaching Hindu. I'm doing your coaching for your stresses. So that's when they say it in a sort of way of attack, like, I don't even like om chanting, I don't even do that, I only pray to Jesus, and Jesus helps me, and he's the only God we have to go to. He's the only savior. So they talk like that. I understand them because I understand Jesus also, because in meditation you meet and you love God. But how do you then serve them? Or do you put that fence you said and get back? Like, how can you still love them unconditionally? It is getting irritating when I'm meeting these people over and over every single day, and they keep saying that.
You are in I mean, fantastic question. You are very in a situation where, as a teacher, healer, leader, guru in your own right, yes, you are. This is wonderful. Okay, a number of things. First, I mean, even Krishna says this. Krishna says, "Do not give this knowledge for those who can't handle it." I mean, forget the Sanskrit word he used. He says, "Don't." He just don't give this knowledge to those who can't handle it. In the end of the Bhagavad Gita, or the ninth chapter, Krishna says, "This is the most secret of all secrets." Not everybody can handle this. Not everyone can handle the Bhagavad Gita. Not everyone can handle. There's a wonderful picture. I'm going to come back to your question. There's one wonderful picture of Krishna floating on he's on a banyan leaf. I don't know if you've seen that picture. I'll post it in the WhatsApp group. He's laying on a banyan leaf and he's floating in the waters of devastation, and he's sucking on his big toe like a little baby. And I was telling one of my Catholic friends, I was saying, he and I have discussions for the past 2 years. We very broad-minded individual, staunch Catholic, but we're able to have these discussions. He's taught me so much and vice versa. And I said, "What do you think about this picture?" That's God. And he had a hard time grappling with the idea that God would be a baby sucking on his big toe. This is something that, as Krishna says, you can't tell this to everyone. Raja Vidya, Raja Guya. It is the highest knowledge, and it is the greatest secret simultaneously. And it's not that Hinduism is the greatest secret. Sanatan Dharma, this understanding that we can have a relationship with the Supreme, is a secret in any religion. I mean, even in Hinduism, a lot of followers of Shankaracharya have a problem with seeing Krishna or seeing God as a personalized. So it's not just other religions. Even within Hinduism, there's a struggle with accepting the Supreme as a personified individual. Anyways, to answer your question, how do you deal with, on a practical level in your life and as a teacher, as a spiritual teacher? Recognize that what you're bringing to the table is not for everyone, and you can still love them. And I love the words you use. How do I serve them? You see, your desire to serve is still there. That's the beauty of Bhakti Yogis. Anyways, your desire to love and to serve is still there. How to do so? I'll tell you how. And I'm going to give you a real practical example of a story. There was one lady, I'm going to anonymize this, but she was part of the congregation here in Boston, at the temple I served in. I was president of the Boston temple and ISKCON temple. She's moved away, family's moved away. Anyways, so her daughter-in-law had a child, so it's her grandchild. Now, she's a Vaishnav Hindu all the way through for 30, 40 years, raised her children, her son that way. Her son got married, but her son's wife is, favorable to, not against, Hinduism and Bhakti Yoga and all that, Gita, not against it. But they had a child, the grandchild. So the daughter-in-law, she said, she said this to the grandmother. She said, "I do not want you to bring Hinduism to my grandchild." And this devastated the grandmother. So she called me up and she said, "How do I deal with this? How do I, And I was saying, well, Because, and the daughter said, I don't bring any of the Hindu, Vaishnava, none of that. I'm only going to raise my child as a Christian. So the grandmother came to me and says, how, she was completely, it's a grandchild, her first grandchild. And I said to her, what's the problem? Jesus was a bhakti yogi. I said, this is an excellent opportunity to go into the teachings of Jesus. Now, I'm not saying this applies to you, but I'm saying how to serve such situations. You may, you may actually have to say, well, this is what I do. I understand if it's not for you, that's perfectly fine. And loving them is by allowing them to express their resistance, because it's not harming you, right? It's limiting themselves, but it's not harming you. And giving them still unconditional of saying, I don't know, this is what you don't want, this is what you don't like, but if in any way I can help you in a way that you do want, let me know. That's sometimes all you can do. But going back to this particular story, I was telling the grandmother, I was saying, Jesus was a bhakti yogi. If you read the Sermon on the Mount, and I do recommend this to all of you, read Jesus's Sermon on the Mount. I think it was to Mark or to Matthew. Oh, it's actually to a number of disciples, but it's in the book of Matthew. It will be a revelation. You read the teachings of Jesus on the Sermon of the Mount, and it is almost word for word the teachings of Bhakti. Many of you may have read the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It is almost word for word the teachings of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and certainly the principles can all be found in the Bhagavad Gita. Every single one of them. It is mind-blowing. So I told the grandmother, I said, so take her to church. Now the grandmother was also, she could not, but I have to give up Krishna. You don't have to give up Krishna. First of all, the teachings of Jesus and the essential teachings of the Bible are non-different from the teachings of the Gita. Trust me. Don't trust me. Read it. The 10 Commandments. You take the 10 Commandments. I could preach a sermon on the 10 Commandments straight from the Bhagavad Gita. Easy. Not a problem. I'm saying all that to say this. On a practical level, they have their own limitations. Allow them. Give them to space and encourage them. Yes, follow Jesus. Really, Prabhupada, who's the founder of ISKCON, you may know, Prabhupada was 100%. Please, I want you to follow Jesus more than you want to follow Jesus. Follow Jesus. Absolutely follow Jesus. Again, so practically answering your question, how to deal, I think you've done it already perfectly. I know you want to serve more. I think what you have to do is realize is what Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guya. This king of knowledge, the recognition that we can have a loving relationship with the Supreme, and the Supreme can manifest in our life personally, and we have a personal relationship. That is the highest knowledge. It's also the most secret, not because it's kept away. It's everywhere. The Bhagavad Gita is free to anyone. Jesus talked about a relationship with God. It's right in the teachings of Jesus. The reason why it's secret is because we have a hard time. Again, we have this, we want, because of our prejudice, we do not actually want to see a personalized God. If I am racist against Black people and you point to Jagannath and say that's the Supreme, a racist will freak out. If you tell a misogynist that the Supreme is a woman, Mohini Murti, They can't handle that because they're misogynist. So they want this idea of the supreme to not have a name, to not have a form, to not to look any certain way, so that our traumas, our racism, our misogyny, our conditioning, our subjugation by the Adisha Dwargas can sit and be undisturbed. And yet we can call ourselves spiritual. I don't have to change my misogyny. I do not have to change my racism. I do not have to change my exploitation of the world. I do not have to change I do not have to stop, hunting tigers because I want a fur coat. I don't have to stop doing any of that. And yet I can call myself spiritual. That's why it's a secret. That's why it's hard to reveal this. That's why people don't want to hear it, because we want to be comfortable in our conditioning, in our delusion. Okay, so going back to answering your question, sometimes I go off on tangents. I do so with a purpose to answer your question. And I think you've already answered it, but your desire to continue to want to help is so wonderful, but you may actually have to, the help that you may have to give is to say, yes, Jesus is what you need. If there's any way I can help you, let me know, but absolutely praise Jesus. And just like I told the grandmother, what's your problem? Go to your granddaughter's house, take your granddaughter to church.
And I understand that and I do that, but then I still see them in pain, because they're just reading the Bible, but they are still in pain. And it hurts me to still see them in pain. And I want to take away that pain because I have that gift to take away that pain. But then I have to pull back. So what do I do is like the next part we were talking about was the detachment. Is that where the detachment, I'm sorry, is that where the detachment is with the people? Like, do I have to detach myself? Or is it the love which is causing the pain to serve
Um,
them?
yes. So causing the pain to serve them is, I wouldn't say a detachment from them. I think it's if we want the place where detachment can be applied is being detached from your role as the person to help them. Detach yourself from that role and recognize they need Jesus. They really need Jesus. So detach yourself. And there's a wonderful example. I was actually listening to Carl Jung, and he was talking about empaths, and it's something that may benefit you, or persons like us who want to serve in wherever we can. We see someone suffering. He says, we can help them. We put it there, they're sitting in a well, and we have a ladder, and we can put the ladder in the well for them to crawl out. We have to make sure that we do not fall into the well. At some point, they're sitting there, and we tell them, the ladder is there. They have the ability, hold onto the ladder and just climb out of the well. We can put the ladder, but at the same time, all we can do is, rather than falling into the well and suffering with them, we can be at the edge of the well, put down the ladder and say, I'm here with you. Whenever you're ready, I can help you come up. I can show you how to put hand over hand, but I will wait for you. Sit in there as long as you want. When you're ready, you can crawl out. So it is actually very, very important. I love stories of the Mahabharata and stories of Krishna. Krishna tried to help Duryodhana. Duryodhana wasn't hearing it. Krishna had to walk away. Krishna says, that's perfectly fine. So where detachment doesn't mean you won't feel. Of course you're going to feel. That's bhakti yoga. That's understanding and dealing with and accepting. That's not spiritual bypassing. That is actually dealing with what you are experiencing. The detachment comes in on your end, not separating yourself from them. They may separate themselves from you. That's their choice. So it's not about you separating yourself from them. The detachment needs to be within yourself. Detach yourself from the role of being the one who saves them. They need Jesus, or they need to make a different choice, or they need Jesus. But you can be who you are by offering, saying, your recognition that Jesus was a bhakti yogi. Man, don't tell them that. Jesus was, I personally have no problem giving teachings on the teachings of Jesus. I tell my Christian friends, I don't call myself a Christian because I don't want to offend you. But in my heart, I consider myself a follower of Jesus, 100%. I'm saying that to you, and I mean it. I consider myself a follower of Jesus, 100%. Anyways, I digress. So what you would have to do is separate, is a recognition. This is Raja Vidya, Raja Guya. It is the highest knowledge, but not everyone can accept it. And as Krishna says, you cannot share this with everyone. In the 12th chapter, Krishna gives Arjuna, he tells Arjuna, if you can't do this, do that. If you can't do this, do that. If you can't do this, do that. If you can't, and he gives a list of things that if you can't do the highest, there are many things you can do along the way. Similarly, in dealing with certain people, if they can't countenance hearing Om, back away and say, I'm here in whatever way you want. If you want to talk about the 10 Commandments, let's talk about the 10 Commandments. If you want to read about the life of Jesus, you tell me what in the Bible can you use to help you. When they see your love, your bhakti being manifest in acceptance of their choice, that more than anything else is going to manifest the teachings of Jesus, which is Bhakti Yoga, I kid you not, is going to manifest in their heart.
So I was supporting them
Mm-hmm.
and I was helping them with the food when we had the hurricane here. And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing I did, with food and everything, next thing I know, they are saying, oh, come tomorrow and we'll baptize you. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to pull back because just to help and serve them, I don't want to be baptized. So then I didn't go back. So is that wrong?
I'm not going to tell you what's wrong for you. I would have gotten baptized. I have no problem getting baptized.
Because I felt they should just accept me to help them and support them. I don't have to be converted to be a Christian to help them. Because I went there for humanity's sake. Like somebody, people are in pain, they need food. I have the ability to provide that. I can go and do that. And from the kindness of my heart, I was doing that.
I agree with that 100%. I will now, and so don't do what is not for you to do. So I'm not going to suggest you do anything other than what is suitable for you to do in your authentic and genuine self. I will share what I would do. For me, I do not look at conversion the way they do. They look at this and the way that devotee grandmother thought. She thought she would have to convert. She heard conversion. She's white American. So in the white American, or I would say nothing is white, it's not about white, but in American society, the culture of conversion means you give up and you accept. It's also in Islamic culture, you give up and you accept. In Vedic spirituality, you can accept and accept and accept and accept and accept. Now, bear with me. I'm not talking about accepting foolishness and harm and craziness, but in the sense of the spiritual teachings. So conversion for me into Christianity is not in any way renouncing my worshiping, reading the Bhagavad Gita, worshiping Radha Krishna. I will not give up any, that's going nowhere for me, for a very simple reason. They're the same thing. They are the same thing. Now, they don't know that. They think it's different. They think that if I convert to Christianity, then I'm going to give up that. So for me, I would tell the person, sure, I'll convert. I'm not going to give up any of that, but I'll become a Christian. There is nothing, absolutely nothing a Christian does that I would not do as a bhakti yogi. In terms of the teachings of Christ, they eat meat. I'm not going to eat meat, but you know what I mean? Eating meat is not a Christian principle. I'm talking about the principles and the teachings of Christianity. There's nothing, absolutely nothing in the teachings of Christianity that are contrary to the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Convert me. I mean that. I absolutely mean that 100%. That's me. I'm not so, but the point I'm trying to make is this. Your authentic expression of who you are, don't go against that. Absolutely. But from an intellectual understanding, know that when it comes to Christianity, the teachings of Jesus, the Ten Commandments, Sermon on the Mount, and all the teachings of Jesus, there is not a single contradiction in the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Don't take my word for it. Study it. Now, what I will say is, don't push this on to them. Krishna makes this very clear, not everyone can handle it. What I would suggest you do is encourage their love of Jesus. Do not bring them to a Bhagavad Gita class. Do not bring them to Hinduism. Don't. When they talk, like my friend, he's a Catholic. I'm not trying to bring him to Hinduism. We've had these discussions every 2 weeks. We'll go to the Panera, we'll sit, he'll bring out the Bible. I do not bring a Gita. He'll bring all his Christian stuff and he goes for it. And all I do is I sit there because everything he quotes, I can quote the Sanskrit verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's hilarious in my own mind. I never do it to him. I will say this. When I met him 2 years ago, as opposed to now, my God, as far as he's come, not to becoming a Hindu, but to recognize that Bhakti Yoga and the teachings of Jesus are one and the same. He has come so far, and what's actually working is the fact that I am not saying Jesus is wrong, or this is wrong, or this is the only way. And that's bhakti. That's bhakti. I'm not saying I'm the bhakti. I'm not self-aggrandized, resorting to, what's the word? Self-adulation here. I'm saying that as bhakti yogis, we can share and express and bring about an environment of bhakti without ever mentioning anything about Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, they don't know that. They, meaning anyone, even other Hindus, they have their beliefs and a certain type of, understanding of whatever. But bhaktis are able to keep a space that allows them to mature, allows them to grow, allows them, when they talk about something, my Christian talks about a particular principle of Jesus, I emphasize it. He wants to talk about the 10 Commandments, I emphasize it, 100%. So in our spiritual maturity, we see Christianity, we don't see it the way they see it, to be honest. In our spiritual maturity, when we come to spiritual realization, we read, and that's not just with Christianity, that's with the Quran, with the Bible. You can read these books and see Krishna's teachings in all of them. It is absolutely mind-boggling. That because it's Sanatana Dharma. It's eternal. The teachings are eternal. This is Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is in the Bible. Sanatana Dharma is in the Quran. The Sanatana Dharma is in the Old Testament. It's everywhere. You cannot open these books and not see Sanatana Dharma everywhere. It is, trust me. Don't trust me. Open it and read it, and you will see. As you come to understand and mature and become immersed in realization of the Bhagavad Gita, you cannot open the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, whatever, and not see it right there. Trust me. Don't trust me. You can do. So I'll finish there. And yes, many of you have had to leave. So I'll finish there. This is being recorded, and I will put the recording. I may not put this on YouTube because YouTube, all kinds of people who watch the videos on YouTube. And again, this is about seeing the connections between pure spiritual wisdom throughout the Gita, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, the Amida Buddha. It's all the spiritual teachings. It's Sanatana Dharma. It's universal. So I'll end there. Hari Hari. Next week I want to review more, but we'll discuss this in the chat. Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna. Krishna.
Hare Krishna.